Fantastic. It's recording already. Thank you, Kurt. Thanks, bye. Bit of information into my files. That's. Silly. Yeah, hey Joe. We're recording already, just so you know.
Well, it zooms in on you apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, that little camera is pretty pretty high tech. We're gonna have a lot of people joining by Zoom. Joe, do you want to be the person to let people in? Can you run the mouse over there and click the little blue admin button in the big screen on top? Dave, how's it going?
Emily. Good, how are you?
It's already on your left hand big screen. So yeah. It's over here. Let's get that. You button. No, no, we get to. So we got Sheila and Jens. Cool. Right. Oops. Maybe she'll be back. Okay. It's not even 6 o'clock yet. Already got people here. This is good. I know we're going to be missing a few people tonight. Roger's not going to be able to make it because he's at a school board meeting. I had to choose between the two, but hey, the Kelly and the cookies.
I baked
Wow. They're our favorite.
peanut butter cookies.
Wow.
Figured I'd fry.
Hey, Kelly. Oh, you're right. Kelly. Kelly. Hey.
Kelly. On the phone maybe though.
Oh, good, dude. Oh, don't worry.
It's snowing at our house.
Yeah.
Is it snowing at your house, Dave?
It's not coming here right now.
A little bit, not too much.
Really? Yeah.
That's your cue, Joe. Just hear the noise.
I'll take them out.
Or
Yeah.
Skilly's got it. Yeah.
Probably Tuesday. What'd you do? Did you-
Ethan and Kate are both to get in.
You don't have to hire me. Let me see.
But it's not.
Close. Over here.
Bell on your-
So you can even click. All ladder slid out from under me.
Oh,
Made them all in.
Do you have the power?
Black eye, nothing. No, we don't need this.
black eye.
I
You didn't hurt your shoulder?
Yeah, I don't think you do.
That's all you need is to screw up a rotator. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Oh, jeez. This is well, you know, because this ice is not forgiving. Oh,
I think you're all right. Hayden's here, Jens is here. I see Kate's, Kate's here. I don't know if she's got a video. You look like you're here.
Oh, our humor. Awesome, thank you. We'll take it.
You won't feel though, right?
Yeah, we did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome,
got it.
thanks for remembering.
It was safe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dig in, yeah, please do. Peanut butter chocolate chip.
Yeah, help yourself. Don't be shy. I was a little shy. Shy, Dave, don't be shy. Emily, help yourself. Don't be shy. Yeah, I know.
Always make some.
Strategically seated.
So I'm like, all right, I had time today, so. Billy's like, can I at least have one before we go? So he took us.
Two, actually.
Two, yeah.
I had to get two out of her.
Hi, Kate. Aiden.
Quality control, exactly.
Can you guys hear us?
Hey, Jens. Good to see you.
Uh,
Exactly.
Aiden, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we're just, there's the day again. This may work, hopefully.
No, I'm not sure who it is.
Have you been out on your skis since that trail day? I mean, we had a big melt, of course, but.
Yeah, we've been out
Welcome.
We've only been out
Twice.
a couple times on the skis, just because timing with work.
Yeah.
We've been out in snowshoes. And then we ended up connecting with the trail chief for section 26, which is Route 15 to basically Collinsville Road.
Yeah.
And Gilly and he asked us, and we just did it from Route 15, like at the Mennonites, to Garfield Road. It took us like 2 weekends. So we were working on cleaning it and there was a lot of blowdowns.
Yeah.
So now this weekend, we'd like to go back and ski it with the signs up. So, yeah, with any luck, have you guys been out?
A little bit here.
Yeah,
I mean, weather conditions.
I know. It's just timing, it's like that thing called work and,
Here this time of year or?
Well, it should be about the same.
yeah.
For work, until about 8.
And I was pleased with like yesterday, didn't get as.
Outside, like.
Yeah, I have,
Right?
yeah, I'm not like totally booked all the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
It wasn't so warm as last summer's.
no. And when I drove home yesterday, I was like, the river looked high, but not scary, like this. But.
Right.
It's Waterville. In water, there's a bridge that did get blown out.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the people that works with me, she lives over near there, she said it's like on an S curve, I can picture it in the Waterville Lake Bridge line, yeah. No joke, this how.
Is Roger planning on being with us tonight?
Roger's not gonna be able to make it.
No.
There's a school board, like, SU-wide school board meeting tonight, so. Don't go away, Joe, I'm gonna be there in a second.
Kelly, those are great.
Oh, good. Excellent, keep eating them.
Well, you can see there's two trays, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a double batch.
Yeah, big batch, yeah. They freeze, I'll freeze them too, so.
Dave, Dolly and I saw each other 3 or 4 weekends ago at the dump.
The dump's the place to be, that's where you
Think
see
so.
all your neighbors,
Yeah.
So he goes to the dump and I'm like, who'd you see? What's the gossip? Him and the dog go, do you take your dog?
Yeah. Slide notes to every dog in the town. Guarantee you get a cookie.
Go for
That's right.
We said to Cody, you want to go to the dump? She's like, oh, yeah, I want to go to the dump.
Sly's like multi-talented. He was dishing out like advice, marital advice to somebody, relationship advice the other day. So the line of cars kind of backed up until he was done.
Yeah.
Who's dishing out advice?
Sly, you know Sly,
Yeah,
he's the one who runs.
Oh, yeah. He's great. I enjoy talking. I know his name is Silvio. I don't know. He goes by Sly.
He introduced himself as Sly, so,
Same person. We probably are.
yes.
What do you call him, Dave?
I don't know.
You don't know. He
I don't know.
introduced himself as Sly,
Yeah,
right?
and it would make sense if his full name is Silvio, because then Sly would probably be short for Silvio.
Next time, hey Sly, how you doing?
Well, he hasn't said anything to me about it.
It's-
Because every weekend it's Sly and he doesn't say anything to me, so.
He introduced himself.
And he's still-
Hi.
Yeah, okay, all right, good.
So let's call this meeting to order. I think we got everybody we're gonna get. And we're already running a little late. Get tech issues sorted out, thankfully. So we're all here. And I'm gonna run the agenda from memory because it's packed, but it's also simple enough, I do believe. So and you should all have gotten the agenda by email. If anybody did not, hasn't been up to date on the emails, look confused or something, and we'll work it out. So first order of business, anything that you want to talk about that wasn't on the agenda that we should add for tonight's meeting? Head shakes all around, so cool. Then the next item would be approving the minutes or the notes from our previous meeting. I already requested for my particular pet peeve to make sure that we spell Rhoda Bedell's name correctly. That was one thing that I noticed. Otherwise, I didn't see anything. Any other issues with notes from the last meeting? Anybody care to make a motion? Sure.
I move to accept the meeting notes.
Okay. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? You guys have it. Okay. Sheila, you may have to come off of mute for the votes. I'm taking your vote as a yes on this one. All right. Next order of business is update from our friends with TPL. Thanks guys for both attending. Who wants the floor?
I'll take the floor and then Kate will fill in any gaps that I miss along the way here. It's great to see such a large turnout tonight, especially with Emily in the room. That's fantastic. We have a few updates, so I'm gonna try to make this quick with room for questions at the end here. I'll start with the interim stewardship plan with the small amount of updates that we talked about in a previous meeting that was approved by the select board last month in December 20th. I posted that on the Google Drive. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. But it was essentially adding in the artificial pond, the earthen dam into the plan, and the recommendation to close the trail that goes through the ecological protection zone. Stuff we've talked about in the past, but if you have any questions, we can talk about it again. That's now highlighted in the new plan. Survey update. As I think everyone knows, there will be new surveys for both the Bedell property and the Bourne property. We've been connecting with both surveyors on those to finalize those plans. And once they're done, we'll be sharing that with the town, as well as sending them along to Vermont Housing Conservation Board and the Forest Service for their due diligence review. Blazing is still on track as well for both properties. So we've been in contact with the surveyors on that. So both properties will be blazed. The Bedell property will also have paint. The Bourne surveyor was unable to do the painting, so that'll be a great volunteer committee activity once it's under town ownership. The phase 2 assessment on the Bedell property, we're still waiting on the phase 2 report. It was delayed because of the snow in December, made it really challenging for the folks to go out there and do the soil sampling. So we're expecting that later this month. Affordable housing update. We have an approved subdivision permit from the town DRB. So that's moving in the right direction there. Just so everyone knows, the acreage on that is just shy of 2 acres. So it doesn't really significantly impact the acreage that we're expecting here. Total acreage of the community forest, Wolcott Community Forest, is going to be 735 acres. Vermont Housing and Conservation Board review, I connected with them today. They are hoping to be able to get back to us from their due diligence review pre-closing, maybe tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it's going to be next week. U.S. Forest Service started their review mid-December. As we've highlighted in past meetings, they require at least 60 days to complete their review of all of their project documents prior to a closing. So they still have some time to be able to get that done, but we're hoping that they can finish it prior to the 60-day window. And they've been connecting directly with the town on a grant agreement for the community forest program funding. So that's underway as well right now. As for project timing, closing, we're hopeful that we're going to be able to close by the end of February. It really depends on how everything shakes out with wrapping up partner review of all the due diligence documents from the Forest Service, the final phase 2 report on the Bedell property, and us being able to avoid a looming government shutdown. We're hopeful that there can be an agreement made, and that's not a threat here. The Forest Service can complete their review and the funding can get to the town. So we'll know more on that later in the month, depending on how everything shakes out. Those are my updates. Happy to answer any questions. Kate might fill in some gaps that I missed as well here.
I have one update. I think Gordon shared that we were in the midst of applying to an anonymous foundation for their December meeting to help to get some additional funding for educational programming around the town forest in partnership with the school, as well as to increase the stewardship funding that we'd be able to provide for the town for future costs. That review of that grant has been delayed till March. So we don't know whether we will have extra money for those 2 buckets or not. But at a minimum, there's going to be $32,500 given to the town for a long-term management endowment. 20,000 of that will come from Trust for Public Land, from private funding that we've secured. And 12,500 of that is going to be donated by the Bourne family, who we're buying the property from, directly to the town for future management costs. So that is exciting.
I'd
That's
also
really
add,
exciting. Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to add one more thing before we get to questions. We did get a written update from Sinuosity on the conceptual trail design. The hope is that we'll have kind of a more detailed conceptual design plan for the next meeting from them, and maybe even them able to actually attend the committee meeting to be able to answer questions. But the quick update for tonight is that specifically on the section of trail that we had talked about this in a prior meeting, the pedestrian footbridge that would be crossing Elmore Branch, that's no longer part of the plan. That's been nixed. They're no longer going to be building a bridge over that section of river. It just no longer makes any sense financially, or with the flooding event. It doesn't really make any sense feasibly with the threat of flooding disasters down that channel of river. So they're going to be using kind of a similar layout from what they proposed in the original design, with the trail that goes down the hill, and then they will be having that connect with the road, and then having folks actually cross the bridge to get to the field. There are other there's other additional text here, and I could actually post this to the Google Drive and share this with the group through the Google group email so everyone can take a look. But that was one highlight that I wanted to share tonight before we get into any trail conversation.
I got that same message from them. I got a copy of the document about it a couple hours ago, and
Okay.
it's posted in Google Drive in the folder for tonight's meeting.
Perfect.
We can probably organize our drive a little better, but topic for a future discussion. So is the due diligence reviews from U.S. Forest Service and VHCB, any feedback or questions, any dialogue coming from them?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I reached out asking, and we haven't heard anything. Hopefully from VHCB either tomorrow or next week. Forest Service, we haven't heard anything from them on their review.
Okay. I take it that's a good sign, right? If they're saying nothing, it means that they're all good with it.
We hope.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody, any other questions, anybody? All right, so let's move on. Linda's here with some news for us. So over to you, Linda.
Well, Gordon asked me to come tonight and talk about one of the buyout properties that I mentioned earlier. It's the Westover property. It's the first property when you come over School Street Bridge. It has been approved for the buyout. I sent Gordon a map today of how it connects to the Bourne property. It goes along the rail trail quite a bit. And this section of the Bourne property down by the rail trail, it would connect there. I also sent him a copy of what the state says we can do with that property and what we can't do, because once you buy it, the town owns it because it's bought, you know, for floodplain management. There's certain things you can do with it. You can't have any paved surfaces or anything, or you can't add more gravel, but you can have trails, picnic areas, pavilions, anything that doesn't have sides to it so the water can go through. It actually allows you for public rest rooms, but I don't see how that would happen without sides on it, but you can have water. So it's exciting. The process right now is that property has been approved for a buyout. I'm in the process of obtaining bids on appraisal services. That property will be appraised. And then the property owner has that, at that point, to agree or disagree whether they're gonna accept the buyout by what they'll pay them for that property. There's 40 acres of land. A lot of it.
Essentially, this is what sits between us and the Bourne parcel. It's all covered with blue tubes right now in the sugaring operations, as well as, and Linda, what I'm curious about, I haven't paid a lot of attention to, and I just now noticed the map that you sent. I had seen the other document, but I'm curious about how the lines actually run behind the old school property and the other properties in town. But basically, this is the first driveway on the right as you come across the bridge on School Street. And with the 40 acres are connected to that house. And so all of that becomes town property now, adjoining the town forest and running quite a ways up the hillside alongside the town forest. So it's my opinion that the town actually ought to at least combine the management of the properties, and that the Forest Stewardship Committee, I will advocate that the Forest Stewardship Committee should basically be the town body that takes over the management of those 40 acres as well as the 730 acres. Oh.
First, we need to make sure that we own it. I mean,
Right, right.
another one of the things that they said was allowed on there was camping.
Right, campsites, and essentially no pavement, but basically hard packed gravel surfaces and quite a lot of other things. There's a couple of page document that Linda forwarded to me, which I will post on the Google Drive. There's some restrictions, but there's, you know, a long list of allowed usages.
Well, my question was, could we make it, if we own it, could we make it like a trailhead with a parking lot?
Probably so, according to what I read in the document. So, you know, to Linda's point, let's go light with the planning process until we get, at least get the appraisals and the feedback. But I have to say, I'm super excited about it.
I'm hoping by mid-February, I will have the appraised values, and that's the opportunity for the property owner to decide whether they will accept or not. And then from then on, you know, the town is in charge. One of the things that's said in that paper from Vermont Emergency Management was, like, they have a garage there. We could save that slab, you know, and take the walls down for the garage, but it could be a shelter, you know, a place for people to stop or hang out there. There's a lot of opportunities if they wish to go forward.
Linda, what's the potential funding source for that?
Well, because this property is being funded, well, initially it's from ARPA, but it's through the, just give me a minute. Flood Resilient Communities Fund, Building Watershed Resiliency in the Face of Climate Change. And so the state government put a lot of ARPA money into that fund. We're doing a lot of work along the Wild Branch too, to stabilize the highway, you know, the North Wolcott Road from being washed away. So we have other monies that we're using for that fund too, but that's where it's coming from.
Thanks.
Two other properties are the ones that when you get across that bridge, the Elmore Branch, two of those properties have been approved too. But they don't really connect to the forest, I don't think. I don't know, I'd have to look into it, yeah.
No, there's a couple of big pieces of property close in between them and the forest.
Correct, yeah.
So what would happen to the buildings?
They have to be demolished. All the buildings have to be demolished, taken away.
A fantastic spot for, you know, parking and access. Come across the bridge and turn into a driveway and access the town forest from that site. And the rail trail for that matter. I mean, of course, we have great parking for the rail trail, you know, right here by the town offices, but it's, you know, and the ledges, I remember being, you know, going to school out here and looking longingly at all the ledges and the forest and stuff. There in the, you know, right by the school building. And Kate is the magic map maker. Look at this.
So a lot of it is pretty wet, just to let you know, because as you know, there's that steep hill that comes down and drains onto that land. So, you know, it's kind of wet in there
Yeah.
at times.
I think it's the potential for like playground park area is, in my mind, is fantastic. Exactly the stuff I wanted to play in when I was a kid. Still like to, actually.
There's a lot of
So-
townspeople that would like to see a little park along the river there, you know.
Uh-huh. Right, so yeah, I mean, it adds a lot to the river frontage that we have in the town forest.
Right.
So, cool. We have a lot of other things to cover. Any other questions for Linda? Or anything else you want to add to that? All right, then let's move on. Next item on the agenda. Folks, in the last week, I've reached out to a few people in different places. Specifically, I think I mentioned in our email discussion group, our town forest sits right here, and you know, a few stones throws away from us is the Worcester Range Management Unit and the Woodbury Mountain area that's conserved by Newt. And in between those is, you know, a big chunk of land just off of Route 12. But, you know, Route 12 kind of runs through it. There's a whole lot of land down there owned by the Vermont Land Trust, presumably conserved. And there's other conserved parcels in there as well. And I think it behooves us to find out a lot, as much as we can, about the plans and stakeholders and interests involved in all of these parcels and see how we can align with them. So to that end, Jens from Forest Parks, no, from Fish and Wildlife, got back to me in my inquiries about the Worcester Range Management Unit. And so we've had a little back and forth, and he's agreed to come and talk to us. In the course of our conversations, there was a lot of cool things that I found out that Jens was involved with. So specifically, a couple of things that we talked about, and Jens, I'll let you, you know, choose which you want to focus on, but areas of interest include aligning specifically with the forestry and recreation and all of the various things that are part of the Worcester Range Management Unit on the one hand. Jens also has a lot of involvement with other communities and community forest kinds of initiatives in other towns. I actually met him or saw him across the room at a meeting in Craftsbury that was organized by some folks there talking about land trusts and land conservation. So we talked about being able to hear from him his experience in working with towns and community organizations around community ownership of property and community forests and recreation and so forth. So those are some of the topics that we had mentioned. And with that, Jens, feel free to add or correct anything I just said, but the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you. It's been a while since I've worked in Wolcott. I think I helped your planning commission with a town plan update some years ago, and I'll speak to a couple other projects. But as Gordon just said, I provide technical assistance to Vermont's 268 municipalities. And so I work with a lot of community groups statewide on these sorts of issues. So I'm not a land manager. I'm more involved in land use planning. I think you have the county forester, you have excellent land managers and others working with you. But I wanted to just zoom out for a second and think about the larger context, not only the Worcester Range unit, but the larger context of this part of Vermont, and talk about some of those issues and how state and conserved land is being managed with some of those issues in mind. And then also just touch on at the end some of the other town forest examples and some of the public processes that I've been a part of that I just wanted you to be aware of. So the first thing I'll say is that Wolcott really sits in a much larger context. We call this area the Worcesters to Northeastern Highlands linkage area. It's eco-regionally significant. So between the Northeast and Southern Canada, this area really stands out as a critically important area for wildlife movement. The map that you can see at center shows connections across from the Tug Hill Plateau on the west side of the Adirondacks up into the Green Mountains, across to the White Mountains, and then even up into the Gaspé Peninsula. So there's this huge area of the Northern Appalachians, and this linkage area that Wolcott sits in is of critical interest. And so, you know, as we think about wildlife movement, adjusting their ranges in the face of a changing climate, the places where we have connections, forested connections, is exactly where wildlife move to allow for that change in climate, in climatic conditions. So maintaining these forested connections across the region is critically important. It's also critically important as we think about economic issues and recreational issues to maintain this forest and maintain it as intact as possible. So Kate is also involved in this Staying Connected initiative that's really focused on habitat connectivity across this region, not only for wildlife, but for the benefits of people. And so Staying Connected really focuses on this multi-pronged approach. And we've been working in this part of Vermont for many years now with this multi-pronged approach. And so, you know, I'll show you some of the best available conservation science that really illustrates how important this area is. There's been tens of thousands of acres of land protection that's happened here. There's really some excellent land use planning at the town level that's happened here. And we've worked very closely with VTrans on road barrier mitigation. So I just want to give you a sense of how all these different groups are focused on your area to really make this bigger pattern of connected forest happen. So the best available conservation science is the BioFinder website. The Vermont Conservation Design is hosted there. And at right, you can see the zoom in for Wolcott. And the dark green are those highest priority areas for ecological function. So these are the places that we absolutely know are critically important and that we need to manage with ecological function in mind. And then at left is what we call the connectivity blocks. So as we think about wildlife movement across that whole huge Northern Appalachian area, these are the forests in Vermont that remain connected to one another and form that connected pattern, north to south, east to west. And so I'll just turn on my pointer here. Here we are, here's Wolcott, but you can see that, you know, the main spine of the greens, this Shutesville Hill Wildlife Road crossing, and then the main spine of the Worcesters, and up into Woodbury Mountain. And so this sort of northeast, southwest chain of connected forest is really critically important. And so this whole area of eastern Wolcott really stands out as a hugely important part of connectivity. So not only just maintaining connected forests within the town, but really adds to this connections across the entire area. So, you know, we began the BioFinder, I think, in 2012. We've long called this area the linchpin Vermont as a critically important forested area that's really make or break for maintaining this forested connections across the whole area. So, and forgive me, this is, I'm undoubtedly out of date. Many of my maps are. Kate has much better information than I do. But at left is that those connected blocks that I talked about, and then at right is the current protected lands database for all the protected land. And so you can get a sense of how the main spine of the greens, there's quite a lot of protection, land protection at high elevation. The CC Putnam, quite a bit of forested, conserved land there. And then it gets much more sparse as we get down into the valley. So the role that this community forest plays as being low elevation conserved land that falls into this bigger pattern is really huge. We've been working quite a bit to come down off the hill, as it were, into these valleys. Statewide, Vermont has conserved 88% of the land over 3,000 feet and about 10% of the land below 600 feet. So we're very good at conserving icebergs, but we're not necessarily as good at maintaining that conserved pattern across a larger area that would actually allow for wildlife movement. So land protection is absolutely a critically important tool here. In the associated with the Worcester Range, Vermont Land Trust has worked on, I think, at least 20,000 acres, trying to expand CC Putnam down towards down to Route 12 road frontage. As you mentioned, Northeast Wilderness Trust has been really active with the Woodbury Mountain Preserve. Trust for Public Land has done a lot here. So there's, and of course, Forest Parks and Recreation as well. So there are a lot of land protection partners that have really focused on maintaining this forested connection. And I just want you to feel a part of that larger effort of really focusing on this pattern of connectivity for the benefit of wildlife and people. I'm intimately involved in the land use planning effort, and I help town planning commissions with land use planning. Just wanted to flag Elmore as one of your neighbors of having some really great language in its town plan, and also bylaws related to zoning and subdivision regulations that really focus development in certain areas and really protect forest reserve. So buying land, maintaining a town forest are absolutely critical for Wolcott, and I'm thrilled that there's so much excitement here and there's been so much effort. That's really excellent. Another step would be to review your town plan and bylaws with respect to these issues and see if you're actually concentrating growth in places that you want it and investing in growth in those places where you want it, and also protecting areas like this where you don't want growth. And so just being aware of that larger pattern. In Vermont, if we don't plan for development, the default is sprawl, especially in towns like Wolcott. So the regulations at the town level matter a great deal. And I just wanted to flag that and offer this example of Elmore. Now, I've spoken a bit about road barrier mitigation, and I'll just give you I'll give you several examples, but two locations. Along Route 12, there are 5 different structures that are being replaced. I believe construction will be this year, might go into next year. But there are 5 different structures along Route 12 that are being vastly improved in terms of the sizing. So this is on the state road system. We're taking a Bridge 94, taking a 6-foot steel culvert and making it into an 11-foot box. Bridge number 90, we're taking a 6-foot culvert and making it into an 80-foot span. When we appropriately size our transportation infrastructure, it allows for floodwater to go underneath. It allows for debris to go underneath. It allows for fish to swim freely without having a waterfall to navigate where you have a culvert with a drop. And at normal flow levels, it allows for wildlife passage, for terrestrial wildlife movement. So culvert sizing is an incredibly important piece of this connectivity puzzle, and there's been a great deal of emphasis on it. It benefits the people in that we're not constantly replacing our infrastructure. And so it's good economics. So these examples are on the state road system, but I would also encourage you, money for culverts, municipally owned culverts is hard to come by, but that's a critically important issue here, thinking about your infrastructure in town and to the extent that it's resilient to flooding, but also allowing for wildlife movement. So here in this Route 12 area, you can see the pink dots on the map. Those are those 5 structures that are being replaced on Route 12. It's really dramatic. I have some telemetry data of a moose that went from Bloomfield to Fayston and was within 100 feet of one of these culverts. That particular moose crossed over the road on Route 12. But I can't help but think that that same journey in another year would have allowed for a lot safer passage under Route 12. We call this section of Route 12 Moose Alley, and since it's been repaved, it's the cars are going faster than ever, and it's really dangerous for people and wildlife. So I wanted to place this structure number 990 in context of all the conserved land that's happened in the last decade. And so you can see C.C. Putnam in dark green, and then some of the Vermont Land Trust holdings in the lighter green. And so you can see where this transportation infrastructure is lining up with protected lands. And so that's the idea, is it's a multi-pronged approach where you have VTrans and the towns working on infrastructure, and then you have conservation groups and yourselves working on land protection. And then to the extent that they can line up, it's much more effective for everyone's interest. We've been working on camera monitoring in Wolcott and in this region for, at least 10 years now. A lot of that has been focused on bridges and culverts, but looking for through passage through these bridges and culverts. And so I'll give you some examples of the camera work that we've done. On Route 12, we've been doing pre-construction camera monitoring, and it shouldn't be a great surprise that with culverts that small, we really haven't seen anything moving under Route 12. But we're confident that with these new appropriately sized, oversized structures, that we'll see quite a bit more use of going under the road. I've also been working, the same Staying Connected partnership, and the department has been really active on the Wild Branch. Linda mentioned North Wolcott Road and the damage that is done there because of ice jams and so forth. And so I was involved in the project to remove the Fort Hill Bridge. So this is North Wolcott Road coming down. Just to the left of the screen is where it would hit Route 15, which you see in the foreground or in the middle of the picture. And then just in the foreground is the rail trail and that newest bridge over the Wild Branch, the rail trail. So this area is actually Fish and Wildlife Department owned land. We worked with the town in between 2018 and 2020 to remove that Fort Hill Bridge. It was falling into the river. It was the abutments were really close, so it was increasing flooding, and it was a barrier to wildlife movement. We also put a wildlife shelf under Route 15 at this location, and last year put 2,000 stems for floodplain replanting in this area. And we removed a berm and to allow for wetland restoration across this area. So I've been really busy on the Wild Branch for a few years now, and we're thrilled with the successful completion of this project. I'll just show you what the before and after looks like with the wildlife shelf. So we're under Route 15. Sorry that these were taken. It's the same bridge. It's the same spot. The photo on the left was taken from one side of the bridge, and the photo on the right was taken from the other. My apologies. But I did just want to show you what that shelf looks like. It's really nothing more than a goat path, where this sort of thing benefits deer and moose in particular, because they have hooves. They don't like going over the rocky ground. And so, we had deer using this shelf within a couple of months of construction. We've also had cameras up at this site since 2014, and you can see some of the data that we've, some of the animals we've detected in this area. Prior to the shelf, there's been very limited movement under Route 15. We have that same groundhog that goes back and forth under the bridge quite a bit. But in the larger area, we've seen moose, bear, coyote, bobcat, just an incredible array of species. So we're confident that as the riparian plantings grow and the wildlife shelf gets more noticed, that we'll have a lot more wildlife use under Route 15 investigation. And then in 2016, I did record a bear moving under Route 15 at this location. So there's been a tremendous amount of focus in Wolcott, in this region in general, about this issue of wildlife connectivity. It makes its way into the Worcester Range planning and the planning for a variety of state lands, and is certainly embedded in the thinking of many of our conservation partners that have been involved in the staying connected. So there are a few links that I'll share with you. I did just want to flag this document. I think it's a 2012 publication called An Enduring Place that really highlights this Worcester's to Northeastern Highlands region and helps explain why this area is so important. So anyway, that's a quick synopsis of this bigger idea of connectivity and the focus of this area, focus on this area and how different agencies have been playing a role in that. My last piece was I just wanted to flag for you thinking about this town forest as a place for community. And it's clear to me that you're already thinking about this and you have excellent help guiding you in these directions. There are pictures on screen from the Montpelier BioBlitz. And I just wanted to give you an example of how towns can really use land and use this sort of ecological backdrop to celebrate their communities. In Middletown Springs, the Conservation Commission led walks and talks in their town forest, Sullivan Town Forest, for nearly a decade. Every month, they had this core group of families that would use that town forest for the walks and talks. Everything from wetlands to insects to mammals, they highlighted on one walk or another. And so town forests can be these incredible community places. And I just wanted, it's clear to me that you're already thinking along these lines, but I really wanted to flag that about how impressive a town forest can be for bringing people together. They can also rip towns apart. I've been engaged in the Andrews Town Forest in Richmond. It's been incredibly contentious to see the recreational interests and the conservation interests butt heads. And there's been a huge rift in the town, and it's still not right as far as my outsider's perspective. And so, from my standpoint, it's never going to be developed. That's the single most important thing, and the land management will come and go. But there's certainly potential here for disagreements. And I just wanted to flag that and let you know that that is happening in other towns, and just how important it is to really focus on process. That as you think about these management decisions, that there are no casualties, there are no emotional casualties in the town. It's more important that the town is together and operating as one than any management decision you could make, in my opinion. And so I just really wanted to flag that that aspect of this. Of, you know, there are risks in managing land that's owned by all the people in terms of differences of opinion. Lastly, I just wanted to say that I do host an environmental leadership training for groups like yourselves, for town conservation commissions, planning commissions, that really focuses on not only the ecological context, the backdrop, but also how to bring an ecological issue through the municipal process. And so it touches on skills, leadership skills for the individual, group facilitation, conflict resolution, but also these scientific concepts. And okay, well, what does connectivity mean? What does, what is wildlife passage? All the way up to, well, what are the zoning tools or the subdivision tools that might be employed for one reason or another. And so we'll be starting those in early February and are currently taking sign-ups. So I know that was a weird hodgepodge of issues, but I hope that I gave you a sense of this larger ecological context, how the partners, various organizations and state agencies are working together to focus on this area, and also just a little bit about that community context and the importance of a process that works for everybody. I want to leave plenty of time for your feedback and also for the county forest. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Comments, thoughts, questions. How did that land with you all?
Comments, anybody?
Well, I just say, first off, thanks for taking the time and speaking to us. I just appreciate, again, just getting the larger picture where Wolcott and the town forest were, as far as this whole stretch from the Worcester Range up all the way up to the Gas Bay. So I just really appreciate you taking the time just to kind of put everything in the larger context. It's really helpful to be able to see that.
When we're talking about connectivity for wildlife, what type of wildlife are you particularly referring to? Because, are these migratory routes? Are these just, daily, weekly, seasonally routes? What type of wildlife are you targeting for this connectivity?
Yeah, what type of wildlife are we targeting for this connectivity? And all species. So the easier examples are mammals that have big home range. Bobcat, male bobcat move 19 miles a day. Moose might have a 1,200 square mile home range. And so those are easy to see that they need different different food sources at different times of year. So they move around a lot to get what they need. Up on the ridge, down in the valley, taking different food sources. This connection to climate change means that even species with smaller home ranges are adjusting their range. And so when we're talking about connectivity, we're not even just talking about plants. About wildlife, we're also talking about plants. So plants, animals, ecological process, all of those are moving, adjusting their range in the face of this changing climate. So even species that have very small home ranges are adjusting those. The Nature Conservancy estimates that entire populations are moving north and south away from the equator about 11 miles a decade, or roughly a mile per year. Entire populations. So I'm not just focusing on mammal movement here. I'm really talking about the full spectrum of life as we know it.
Is there a possibility we'd be encouraging some species that we particularly don't want to move northward, like I'm thinking like ticks?
Ticks are much more likely on the edge of a forest, and deep forests tend to have many fewer ticks. So the more we can keep things forested, the less ticks we're going to have. But I hear you, all sorts of things are moving, but I'm not sure we have a particularly good ability to filter out which species we want to move and which we don't. A good example would be pests. The hemlock woolly adelgid is moving north. We don't have the cold winters that we used to keep it at bay. I don't have any great solutions for preventing that type of movement. But there are an estimated 24 to 43,000 species in Vermont. I'm pretty confident that the vast majority of those will benefit from connectivity.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so the last slide that you were showing with the education opportunities, can you share a copy of that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll share my whole PowerPoint with you. And the links to this are through Community Wildlife Program, my program. But yes, I'll certainly share that with you in an email.
Fantastic. Anything else? I would, now maybe not the optimal time, but I'm getting the sense you're watching the situation in Richmond pretty closely. The ongoing, and I don't know much about it, so I'd love to hear more about it at some point. And just flagging it for a follow-up meeting or another conversation. Any other questions about conservation in general and fish and wildlife, et cetera?
I have a question. This is Maxfield. Is there any research done on the impact of human recreational activity on disruption of animal habitat connectivity? Obviously, we're not going to be looking at motorized, but is there a big difference between like cycling or walking or Nordic skiing in terms of, disrupting these habitat blocks?
Thanks, Maxfield. There is some research on that. I would flag for you Meredith Naughton's review. There's a pretty good Stowe Land Trust webinar online. If you just Google Stowe Land Trust Meredith Naughton Recreation and Wildlife, I'm sure you'll get it. She also did a report, and she's currently working for Green Mountain National Forest. So there is some literature out there. The difference, there aren't easy lines between motorized use and non-motorized use in terms of one being worse than another. I think there's a lot here, and there's a lot to say here. In some ways, just where we have intense trail use can shift wildlife ranges. But we're also trying to balance that with getting people excited about being outdoors, having access to being outdoors, and having opportunity, especially near your town center. So there's the balancing act of how do we get people outside and how do we make sure we're not dramatically affecting wildlife use is an interesting one, and I think does come down to the very specifics of where you're putting your trails. But I really would defer to your county forester on those sorts of specifics, balancing recreation and those other uses.
Great, thank you.
Hey, you put something into the chat. trying to open it up so I can see.
Oh, thanks, Kate.
That's one of our presentations.
Ah, beautiful. Save chat.
Presentation.
All right.
Well, folks, I'll stick around. I'm anxious to hear from Emily, but thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jens.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Much appreciated. All right. Let's we have our forester. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad, yeah.
Glad to be here.
So so you sent out some questions for us or some
Yeah.
topics, and I had thought about a lot of things between when you sent them to us yesterday and today, and they're not it's not really top of mind at the moment. So how would you like to spend the next hour?
I was just hoping to have just hopefully a comfortable, informal discussion with you all. I wanted to thank you all for your work on the stewardship plan. That's been really helpful in giving me background and you know, the survey data and everything that you've brought together in that plan is super helpful. So thank you for that. And I have been thinking about some things as I've been doing the inventory, and I've just been hoping that maybe you've thought about those things too. I just wanted to get your thoughts on some stuff like that. So I did print out some copies, but I felt like it wasn't even really worthy of being printed out. So it's pretty informal, but if anyone's interested in having some copies of my questions.
Yeah, I read it. My email right now. Yeah.
So there's copies enough to go around. So.
Yeah, I printed out a few copies. And I did put here.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, my questions are the questions I always have. The topics I always have. And the you know, one of them obviously is the big question of how do you know, that's how do we balance the you know, the overall desire for conservation with getting people onto the land so that they can fall in love with it. And then, so the question of forest roads actually is a really interesting one. Also, Brooks, the document that Brooks shared, which Hayden referred to, it had observations that Sinuasi had made while walking around on the property. And as you guys probably remember, we talked in a meeting, a couple of meetings ago, we talked about sort of focusing recreational usage on the slopes that are facing Route 15. And you know, taking that as a principle, but I'm aware of a couple of things that maybe, you know, that we should consider and revisit that conversation. One of them is Brooks' observation that the existing forest roads, as he says, are eroding down to bedrock. Which is, you know, which is interesting in and of itself. I wonder if, you know, I mean, we want to have soil coverage, but bedrock also is, you know, can be good to walk on and good to ride on. So that's you know, an interesting point. The other thing that is present in my mind is the thought, if we're thinking about connectivity, do we want it? We probably need to avoid blanketing the whole slope facing the river with recreational usage and actually keep some channels of, you know, like sort of channel the recreational usage, maybe channel it back in, you know, in slots that go back into the forest rather than covering the area to the river. I'm just thinking out loud, but you know, that's the thought that comes to me. So I have a lot of questions about what we should do about the roads. Another thing is, I was walking on the land last weekend and before the snow and just observing how many places are that look to me like if they're not vernal pools, they're certainly seeps and wet soil that's just completely rutted up by the skidder from the last logging operation. And it doesn't look pretty. I don't know if it's problematic or something we should be thinking about doing something with. So those are some things on my mind.
Points. I would say as far as forest roads go, I mean, you'll have old rutting trails can revegetate and become stable. Where I'm concerned is if there are water quality concerns. So if there's rutting on a trail and it runs right down into a brook, that's something that I would want to see fixed. Or like trails that you probably never use again because they're too close to a brook, or if they're really steep, something like that. You might just put them to bed is the term we use, where you're never going to use the trail again for forest management purposes. But you would stabilize it and keep it, stop any erosion from occurring in the future. So those are things I would think about. And then I think your ideas of concentrating the recreation in certain areas is definitely a good idea. And I think I'll have more input on that once I've completed my inventory, but also we know from the ecological review where there are sensitive areas and rare species. And I'm sure you already have thought of this, but just keeping the recreational areas away from those places. Also keeping the larger areas without trails intact as a large block of forest. There are species that depend, like interior forest birds that will only live in areas where there's at least 300 feet in every direction of only forest. And if you put a trail through there, they won't be there anymore. So just all things to be thinking about.
What, like, if you put a trail, meaning a 2-foot wide multi-use trail or a 1-foot wide walking path, even that sort of thing would prevent these birds from nesting?
I'm not sure. I think it's kind of unknown, but we do know that there are different species that depend on interior forest conditions. Yeah, I think recreation is still kind of a murky area. I mean, obviously, it's good to have people in the forest, and getting people outdoors is really important.
Maybe it depends on the amount of use the trail's getting.
Right, exactly.
Emily, as you're doing your inventory, are you noting like old logging roads that you think should be repaired or so?
I've taken some pictures. Now there's snow on the ground, so it's gonna be something that I should try to revisit in the spring probably, but my plan will have to be done before then. So it's not, I plan to continue working with you all in this forest. So maybe that's something we plan on doing once the snow's gone. And that was something I wrote in my notes, was that I thought that did Luke begin that work? He wanted to
I think so.
He
document,
brought that to our attention and we were taking it on.
right?
Where the idea was to really just find all these different logging roads or remnants of logging roads. And using whatever technology he kind of lent the group to go out and just kind of map them.
Right.
So you think that's still something that we should definitely do, just.
Yeah, it's really good to know where your access is and knowing if there's active erosion occurring, working to stop that. That might even mean like volunteer days with rakes and shovels, that kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily have to include large equipment.
It sounds like there's gonna be trails on the Whitcomb Bedell property on the side where the school is.
Right.
After these trails are located, would you have a chance to see if there's any parcels above that the spruce forest where that you could put some habitat cuts or something similar to create food for animals?
You're wondering if I could see what could be done up in there, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I finished that portion. I finished the Bedell side of East Elmore Road. And I would agree, like, there are definitely opportunities in there for forest management. I know that's not something the town is interested in. There are areas of really dense regeneration of spruce and fir under, declining canopy. And also areas where there's hardly any regeneration. So it's almost like a wildlife desert. Nothing to eat. Declining stems in the overstory. So in places like that, those are places where a forester would say we could do something to help, establish some regeneration and create some habitat. So yeah, I mean, I'll make recommendations in my plan, and is that something that's like kind of what you're expecting, right? It's just recommendations. I'm not gonna prescribe anything like definitely, because essentially the town isn't really interested in doing that, right? So.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because, obviously we have results from the survey and, roughly 120 people responding to the survey, and I think there's 1,200 voters or so in the town of Wolcott. That could be, somewhere in that range. Linda's not here to correct me or name the right number, but it's something like that. So, we got survey results from people who were interested in responding to the survey. I do think that the concept of stewardship means taking all of the inputs into account and making good decisions on the basis of our best knowledge. On the one hand, it's easy to articulate a position like, let's just do nothing. Let's let the forest be the forest, and old growth, forever wild sounds good, but what does forever wild mean? Right. The fact that the entire state was practically clear cut, 150 years ago, the landscape has been so significantly impacted by humans, and the whole biosphere is. So the question of what do we really want to be aiming for, and what's what's an optimal state for our forest? How close is it to that optimal state? And how do we help it move to that? It may, a hands-off approach may very well not be the best thing, right? And I don't think I'm saying anything we haven't, is news to anybody. But the tricky part, as I can see, is figuring out what is the best approach to, first of all, what is the optimal state? Can anybody even say? But the people who've been studying this for a long time, and Jens, I'm looking in your direction as well as to Emily. How can we know what would be the optimal state or an optimal state for our forest? And then number two, what do we do to get to that state or stay at that state if we're already close? I think we need expert advice on exactly those things every bit as much as we need reference to the preferences of the town people and the thinking of conservation versus recreation versus timber products or forest products.
Well, I was just thinking that the survey, and over the course of many months of discussion, I think it's fair to say that none of us are interested in or intend to sort of implement like a commercial forestry operation. That's clear.
Right.
But I think given recommendations and advice we might receive from each of you, I'm looking at the experts, if you will. I think it's fair to say we're open to sort of potentially implementing those over time to maintain a healthy forest. Whatever that means. So when I hear you use the term, however you said it, a food desert in the forest, yeah. That seems to me that we might be able to do some things over time to sort of modify and change them.
Right.
That's sort of my thought about all of this.
Definitely. And I would say that we're not looking for a specific state. Forests are dynamic. They're always changing. And so what we want to do is try to help the forest be more resilient by having a high level of diversity of tree species, of shrubs, of herbaceous plants, keeping non-native invasive plants out of the forest. We're definitely going to want to be monitoring the areas where the recreational trails are being put in because invasives tend to follow disturbed areas. And there's already large honeysuckle plants on the hillside above Route 15, which I've been GPSing when I come across them. But so I think there are opportunities to do certain things to encourage a diversity of habitats across the forest. And I did share this PDF. I only have 2 copies today, but I'm gonna have at least 20 tomorrow. My supervisor's gonna leave a bunch on his desk, so I have to pick them up and I will either, do you want me to drop them off here? Or?
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you should all be able to have your own copy of this, Restoring Old Growth Characteristics. It's really a great publication. If you haven't, I sent it to you. It's nice to have a hard copy. But it just talks about certain things that you could do, like crop tree release, selecting some nice stems in the forest, releasing their crowns from competition. It helps for the tree to grow, like increase its diameter much faster than it would normally. And just creating some characteristics that are in old forests that we're lacking right now because of our state's history, because our forests are so young right now. And so those are the things I think about, opportunities out there. Also, there's a lot of really beautiful ash trees on the Bourne Tract, especially I've noticed. I don't know if protecting any of those ash trees is something that town is interested in doing. I know some towns have been injecting their ash trees with an insecticide. You do it yearly for, I think, like the first 5 years, and then you might not have to do it again. Cost is based on the diameter of the tree, but it's a systemic insecticide that the tree takes up, and then the emerald ash borer feeds on the leaves and it kills the adults. So that's an option. It comes with a cost, as I said. But you could consider protecting some trees and then maybe creating some openings in the forest for ash regeneration. Because ash trees require a higher amount of light to regenerate, and their saplings require more light as well. So there's some thoughts.
Doing regeneration they can get big and then not just be victim to the ash borer again, or we're hoping like.
Right, so I
Yeah.
think the thought with treating the trees is that there's gonna be this wave of emerald ash borer coming through. It's gonna kill the majority of our ash trees. And then once that happens, the emerald ash borer is not gonna have as much food to eat, so its population is gonna crash as well. And so then if we still have surviving ash trees in the forest, potentially they're the future ash trees in the forest, so providing a seed source.
You know who's doing that injection?
What's that?
You know who's doing the injections?
Like what towns?
No, who's doing it? Is the county foresters doing it or?
Oh, no, there are a bunch of different companies that do this. I do have a list. I can share it with you. If do you
Well, I have 2 ash trees. I like to.
oh, yeah. Right.
I got a lot of regeneration from them too, so trying to encourage regeneration.
Yeah, I can share that with I'll send an email of the list after the meeting.
Great. And, beside, maintenance of the trails, when you talk about crop tree releasing or any kind of forest management that will entail removing trees or overstory or anything like that. What is the step-by-step process? I mean, Dave and I decided to release a tree. We're not just going to take our chainsaws out there and decide to release it. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of step-by-step process we'll have to take, get approval. Do we have anything like that?
So, if I'm understanding your question, it's, who decides when to cut and what do we do to,
Professional
yeah.
recommendations too.
And then tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the short answer is, any maintenance activities would presumably come to the stewardship committee, right? So the town needs to have a body that will make decisions, and furthermore, they would, any significant thing, I mean, lopping limbs for a trail or something is one thing, but any significant cutting has to be in accordance with the forestry plan, which will be part of the stewardship plan, and also this forestry plan, just as if we were in current use.
So it would be reviewed by Emily, would review it, make your recommendations.
Yeah, and
We
we,
can move forward.
it could even be like a committee activity, selecting crop trees to be released. A lot of times people will release about 30 or 40 crop trees per acre. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like beautiful timber trees. Sometimes it'll be for wildlife habitat value. Mast trees, of trees that produce a fruit, like there's black cherry out there. That are producing fruit, or if you had apple trees, releasing competition around them. But it could definitely be something that we would mark ahead of time and talk about. Could be an educational opportunity.
I was thinking it'd be great workshops,
Right.
especially for landowners
Mhm.
that want to do it on their own land, don't know
Right.
the how or why.
And then just leaving what trees you do cut on the forest floor for coarse woody material. Important for nutrient cycling, soil formation, habitat for amphibians, and drumming sites for grouse. There's all kinds of benefits to just leaving wood on the ground.
Is it like just a full tree down, or do you limb it up and chop it, or?
Full trees down are great. I know some people will create little structures for wildlife with pieces of the tree. I think larger logs are more valuable intact. But yeah.
Say more about, why is it good to leave a large log intact?
Just because it's gonna be providing so much habitat as it decays. A lot of trees will germinate, their seeds will germinate on that rotting piece of wood on the ground. I've heard anecdotally from Jim Andrews, the herpetologist. Have you heard of the Vermont Herp Atlas? I'll send that to you as well. It's pretty awesome. But large logs during drought conditions are holding so much moisture in the forest. And so in these summers when we've had drought, Jim Andrews has gone around and just pushed logs over, and they'll find like 50 salamanders under the same log. So they're just like habitat niches. Yeah, so.
It's the natural cycle, instead of getting hauled off to be turned into houses or wood piles,
Right.
it stays in place.
Were you looking at snags and all that sort of thing when you're going out there?
I am, yeah.
How was that? I mean, is there a good number? Is there a certain number that you're supposed to hit for a healthy forest, or?
Yeah, I think that there are recommendations on snags. I don't have a solid number in my head right now. I would say there are areas that where there are more snags in the forest that I've noticed. And then there are areas where I haven't picked up any snags at all. So I think there's opportunities for that. And girdling is one thing that people will do to create snags, but the thing with girdling is the trees don't end up rotting in the same way they would naturally. So a lot of times a tree that dies and is on the stump might decay, like it might become a hollow log. Because if you girdle a tree, it doesn't necessarily become a hollow log. So,
Yeah.
But it's a practice that people use, especially where there's like large pine trees that are going to destroy nice regeneration around them or something, that kind of thing. So there's opportunities to use girdling.
In your inventory and so on, are there any outstanding observations you would share, or, you know, as you're looking at the forest, does anything jump out that you would recommend we should consider?
I guess so far I've noticed that I think the stocking is pretty high throughout, at least where I've been so far. Like pretty high density of stems, and so that's not always healthy. Well, it's not always optimal for growth, but if you're not looking at a commercial timber harvest, then I guess it's not really something to worry about at the moment. But I will think about that. I mean, I am thinking about it while I'm out there, and I'm more of a writer, so I'll get it to you, you know.
Okay. Okay.
And I think all recommendations that you have would be welcome. Because we would definitely consider implementing them. So you just have that in your mind, that we are interested in really managing the forest for a healthy forest, and sort of going off what Jens has said, you know, to help with the connectivity.
Right.
So definitely have that in mind.
I would say one observation for sure is that the forest is pretty homogeneous in its structure. So there's not a lot of areas with canopy gaps, openings, and young regeneration. It's all pretty much even aged. So that's something to think about, where you could potentially create some openings and have some vertical diversity across the forest. So it's not all just one age of trees everywhere.
How big are the openings, when you say openings?
Quarter acre to 2 acres or something, maybe not even that big.
Okay. And that's you're cutting and leaving as?
Yeah, and you
You're
could even
saying-
have a retention within those areas. So you could select trees that you were gonna keep forever, legacy trees that you might mark to be never cut ever. And they just grow, do whatever they do. They either they'll become huge trees or large snags, or they fall over, or but yeah, it's just I think that is more like the forests of our past. Before humans came in and cut them all down, they were much more structurally diverse, and they're pretty simple now. And so that's something to be thinking about.
So I've got a question about the invasives, and you had mentioned the honeysuckle. I'm wondering about Japanese knotweed, because that seems like that is potential. And there's stands of it all around in Wolcott, and I know I don't know about on I guess the south side of the Lamoille River. But certainly on the north side, and even in the town. So I'm wondering if it's just a matter of time before they start jumping across and then getting up into the. So have you noticed any any of the Japanese knotweed?
I haven't, but I actually don't see knotweed getting into the forest very much.
And why would that be?
I think probably the conditions, maybe it's too shady. Or it's getting out-competed by other plants. Knotweed's a tough one. Hyde Park is working on that. They have a group called Knot in Hyde Park. They go around and cut the stems, and it's a lot of work, and I think it's really, I'm not sure that they'll ever get it all, you know, or stop it from moving. It's really tough when it can move so easily and it resprouts so vigorously. Knotweed's tough.
I pulled up, it's two stems sticking up in the middle of a forest road in my woods. And pulled them up, and the taller stem was 6 feet tall, and pulled 8 feet of root out of the ground. And I know I didn't get it all, but it was it was in a forest road, so it was, plenty of sunlight coming in onto the road, but it was also, better part of half a mile from any road, any like dirt road, or regularly traveled area. I have no idea how it got there. But
it's on a road in your property,
yeah,
potentially on equipment.
Yeah.
It does travel on forestry equipment, that even town plowing. Or mowing, it's spread.
it's been 3 years since any equipment's been on the road. I could have taken that long to get there.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, we're interested in forest resilience, forest health. High stocking levels, is that bad for forest health?
It's not optimal. I think that our silvicultural guides are based on extraction, so.
Mhm.
But also like doing some sort of management in overstock stand might help to increase the diversity, if you created conditions for more shade intolerant species to become established. That's not going to happen in an area that's overstocked with a completely closed canopy. Unless some kind of natural disturbance like a wind event or something knocks down some trees, so.
I guess, looking around the room, my default place is, don't just do something, sit there. It's better, the less we do, the better, is my default way of thinking about it. And so, sometimes, Dave, when you and I are walking in the woods and we're talking about, ways to get access here and there or something like that. And I think to myself, if we're not going to do anything, why do we need access? Right? This is just, the chatter in my mind. But I guess, the thing that I'm always thinking about is maybe there are things that are important to do. How are we going to know? And it's just a rhetorical question, but again, I'm looking to, people with expertise. How are we going to know when we should do something, and what's going to be important to do? And again, if you're seeing things that would be important, again, I think we're going to look at it from a perspective of forest health and say if it's going to give us a better long-term healthy forest, by all means, let's do it. What should we do?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, like the forest is overstocked and there are stems in there that are much better quality than others. Some are diseased, some have injuries, poor crowns. So if you were to go in and remove the unacceptable growing stock, that's what we refer to it as, it could help improve the health. It would remove the disease. It would allocate more growing space to the best stems. Create opportunities for more sunlight to reach the forest floor and establish some regeneration or release advanced regeneration. So I think it's important to look to the data for sure. And then think about maintaining diversity, species diversity. So thinking about like the white pine plantation on the Bedell piece. That's not natural condition, that would be a place where there'd be opportunities to create a more natural condition.
Yeah, I think about this too, and I think the way you're sort of thinking on it is if you leave it alone, it will become old growth, obviously on its own. You just give it enough time, it's gonna happen, but that could take hundreds of years, right? And so for certain species, maybe they don't have 100 years to, or longer, 500 years to wait it out to do well. So we're just trying to speed up that process of a more diverse landscape in the woods for more species. So, yeah, you're right. You can't just leave it and it will be old growth eventually if you don't touch it. But yeah, there's a balance to be done, and things are happening quickly these days with climate change. So it seems like a more active approach is kind of necessary if you do want that health
Right,
sooner rather than later, I guess.
definitely. I think it's important for us to think about forestry and forests, that we're a part of them. We're not removed from them. So, you know, putting all our land into wilderness, never taking anything out of the forest is kind of elitist, because it's just going to cause forests to be cut elsewhere. We're all still going to keep using our paper products and our toilet paper. It's just going to come from somewhere where the forest might not be managed well. So it's good to think about it in that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we need 2x4s if we're building anything in the town. You know, I mean, I don't think our town plan is to stop growth entirely. And I think it's an important thing for us to think about again in terms of stewardship. If we have timber on the town forest that could be used, if we can cut it here and truck it only as far as P&R lumber, or, you know, the other sawmills in Hardwick, and bring it back to build our kiosks, for instance, or build our Habitat for Humanity house, or whatever other construction may be happening in the town. It's probably good to have commercial harvesting here in the town of Wolcott, if we're doing building in the town of Wolcott. And no reason why it shouldn't be on, you know, if it's got to come from someplace, maybe the town forest is the better place to have it come from, rather than, you know, the Cotton's woodlands or DJ's woodlands, or, you know, wherever else it may be. And I think that's the kinds of things that we as a stewardship committee need to be thinking in that bigger picture, about the optimal place and the way to balance all of these competing interests. So again, you know, do we want to see things, do I want to cut trees? I don't want to, but they have, you know, trees have to get cut someplace for my lifestyle. I do know that. And what's the best place to do it? I think that's our question. You know, so big picture, small picture, practical things. A practical question I have is, basically beech trees, right? Beech trees have been dying off in my lifetime. You know, I know a few places in town where there's a bunch of healthy beeches and lots of bear nests in the beaches, you know, and I don't know what other animals besides bears feed on beech nuts, but it seems like healthy forest, you know, more beech trees rather than less would be good in a healthy forest. Is there something we can do? There's a handful of healthy beech up on top of the hill that we've seen up there, and then there's lots of diseased beech all over the place. Are there things we can do to help the beech health?
Retain the beech that are healthy. And try to remove beech that are diseased, because they're clonal, right? They'll sprout from their roots, they'll sprout from cut stumps. Often if you see a beech and there are other beech around it, they're probably all the same beech tree. So yeah, definitely maintaining the healthy ones and
Cut the unhealthy ones?
yeah.
Get them out of there?
Yeah, and it's hard because they resprout, but I probably wouldn't do anything unless you were planning to do like some kind of harvest and create conditions where other species could have a chance to maybe outcompete the beech. Because beech are extremely shade tolerant. So if you're just gonna make a small opening in the canopy and there's already young beech, they're gonna outcompete everything else. So it's a hard they're a hard species to manage in that way, but what we found is historically, we've created a lot of small openings in our forests and beach has responded by outcompeting everything and that's how we end up with places where there's all diseased beach and not much else. So if we create some larger openings, it could encourage species like birches, aspen, just other species that would occupy the site rather than diseased beech. And now there's beech leaf disease has been found in the state. It's not in this area yet, but that's another concerning disease of beech, so. Something to be thinking about, I guess.
Great firewood.
Right.
Yeah. Like burning it. I like to see the healthy trees though.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's on my mind, and asked Kate for some versions of maps of our land, and this what I'm sharing on screen is one of the ones that she sent me. I don't know, I've been walking around a fair amount on the property and thinking about my, just from like, my educated, not educated, my personal thought about how to use different parts of the property. And so to me, as we were talking about before, I think these slopes, you can't see my cursor, but the slopes facing Route 15, I look at them and think, man, it's a lot of fun. Could do a lot of fun things there. It's that to me looks like recreation places. Brooks' review, thinking about mountain biking, he's more skeptical of mountain biking on the steeper slopes, but maybe that's a matter of taste. But I think that the steep slopes going down towards the river have potential for backcountry skiing. Actually, if we, if we have winters with snow, they're steep enough that they look really interesting to me. They're also noisy already, and I don't know what impact that has on wildlife. I know it, has impact for me in terms of my own quiet enjoyment. So again, I'm advocating for enabling recreation on these slopes close to town and close to the highway. On the other hand, as you get, I wonder if I can get a. So I want to point on the screen. Maybe I'll stand up and point on the screen. That won't help anybody who's on the phone. So when you get up on top of the ridge, but as you get over the crest of the ridge, I notice the road noise abates considerably. And so we have a lot of land up here that's on top of the ridge and a good place for quiet recreation. And I like the idea of it being, less actively managed. And in particular, the sensitive cliff is highlighted on this map. I guess you can probably see it. But this whole valley area in here, around the cliff, and it goes on both sides, is really, beautiful, quiet space. Again,
Would you mind if I go up and just be the pointer?
Sure, yeah.
I can't see
great.
I can't see the cursor from here.
Okay.
And this Facebook's online can also, so where?
So,
Okay, right here?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this whole valley, and so here's the cliff, right? And the valley coming up this side is beautiful. It's at the top, in the upper part of it, it's been recently cut. And there's a lot of ruts and slash still left there, but further down, especially on this whole like east facing slope, I don't think there's been any logging activity in the most recent cut. And so this is an area that I would propose we should especially stake out as a low impact area. for any kind of activity. It'd be nice to have a, simple walking path, I think. It's a lovely place to hang out. And I would, want to give people the opportunity to do that. But I think it's a, good place for no management activities.
Is that the real bouldery ledgy area?
There's, well, the cliff face, there's a lot of bouldery ledgy areas, so.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of, I have to go explore it again. I haven't been there in a while, but yeah, thinking of, spot in particular.
Well, I was just thinking, or that, I mean, in general, it seems like going into this, that as a committee over time, we've certainly come to the consensus that the major center for recreational activity with trails we built, cited would be essentially adjacent to the school, so the Bedell property, and that the Bourne property in general, the other side, we going into this just leaving, not necessarily forever wild, but just quiet recreation wandering. So I think isn't that sort of the guiding principle that will drive the essentially human activity on the land? I just so I'm thinking that so I think Hayden talked about maybe Sinuosity attending the February meeting or provided an update, maybe attending. If they can't come, I wonder how it's really important to have them come back and see us in March. So with the property closing and the clock ticking, we have to spend this money by the end of the year. Could be a major focus over the next couple of months. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but those are my thoughts at the moment.
I think you're right.
It seems like there's a tremendous amount of planning for the trail building that, let's say that they're able to start in May 1st, May 15th, depending upon when the ground dries up, maybe June 1st, who knows? And so, and I'm assuming that they will get the work done within that 6-month window, whatever it is. But it seems like that's going to be a huge priority, more important as we go forward. So anyway. So back to my original thought, it seems like essentially, the Ward property on the side of the road, there essentially won't be, aside from maybe if there's old wood roads over there trying to sort of do something, that really that property won't be developed at all in any meaningful way in terms of trails or focused recreation. It's all going to be over here, right? Is that? Are we in agreement?
And I think that's a, decision for us to make. So,
yeah.
I mean, personally, I've asked them every time I go walking, I have different ideas. So, but I'm just one person.
No, I hear what you're saying, Gordon, and I, you know the property better than I, and I've walked it. And I think there's tremendous value and opportunity, but I'm thinking sort of short term, within the next calendar year.
Yeah.
That's not to say 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, the other side could be developed in a really thoughtful way to open up some of those recreational areas. I'm thinking about, time, resources, that kind of thing, what we can accomplish reasonably. So those just talking in terms of what we want to focus on in the next 9 months. So
Talking about the first 5 miles that's been slated.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's we got the money, we got the plan, let's get it done, and then the rest will follow very thoughtfully, ideally down the road with a whole slew of recommendations that you will provide to us, Jens, TPO folks, et cetera. So anyway.
It seems to me that the best access to the Bourne property is up through Westover's land. And it really provides a really nice spot where we could put a couple trails where people could actually get up there and take a nice walk. The closer you are to Route 15 and the river, you hear a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise.
So is that the
Yeah.
or the yellow here?
Yeah,
that's the right of way.
So you're talking about, and That would be coming off the bridge, where it's,
Yeah,
so you come across the bridge and right on the right would be the parking or whatever.
Yeah, so the beginning of, right where your finger is, at the beginning of the yellow, that's the rail trail.
Okay.
Right, and you can see there's some lumps above your finger, those lumps of rock. So straight up, if like almost where you're pointing, yeah. So the smooth area is the rail trail. And then kind of to the right, in between the rail trail and the Word School Street, you can see there's some more ledge. Yeah, all of that. So all of that, I'm pretty sure all of that is part of the Westover property, as well as the area around the yellow right of way.
So hearing that, Dave, I guess the question that I have, I'm sure you're absolutely correct a lot, and that goes certainly in line with Gordon's thinking and others perhaps. So is your thought that we want to dedicate and allocate resources we have in hand to get that work done and sort of shift stuff around in terms of the broader sinuosity plan? Or are you thinking 3 or 4 years down the road?
yes, I really am. I'm not, let's let them build trails like they planned on originally. But I think that's a really nice access into the Bourne property. And it's next to the river. And it either slopes north to the East Elmore branch, or east rather, or north to the Lamoille. And those are the noisy areas of that property. So let's leave the quiet areas back to the south of the Bourne property. Anywhere you can walk back up there, and it's silent. It's really nice. I'm saying let's not create a whole bunch of trails back there, or let's not encourage a lot of people back in that area. Let's limit that area to the area along the river. It's beautiful forest. It's beautiful right now. It really is nice. There's an old logging road that comes down into the Westover property, but it comes out of the Bourne property. That's a mess. It needs to be fixed. And we really don't need to encourage it as a walking. We just need it fixed. So that's what I'm looking at in the near future. Not this year, maybe, not next year, but someday.
Are you talking about there's a logging road on the Westover property that comes kind of right down from this corner?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, another one you mean. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of something I wanted to touch on was if we're going to be putting some of the land aside as reserve that we're never going to be harvesting in, what areas you're looking at and, what kind of acreage you're thinking. And that's something I can make recommendations on, but I would agree with you that is my thought as well, farther away from the roads, deeper into those woods back there. I agree, it's nice back there.
But you also mentioned something about food deserts. Have you identified any of those areas on any of the properties? And if you have, is there some means to do something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are places where there's opportunity to do some harvesting to create some openings where some understory regeneration could develop.
Would you recommend that? I mean, is there, what would you say, commercially significant or commercially worthwhile harvesting that we should look at? I mean, we're getting an endowment with, heard Kate mention, roughly $32,000 of endowment. We don't need money, but on the other hand, if there's harvesting that we potentially should do, again, people are building stuff in the town of Wolcott, having the lumber harvested in the town of Wolcott is not a bad idea. So is there stuff that we maybe should do?
I think there's definitely mature, financially mature stems out there. I don't have all the data yet, but I will have like a report that our system will spit out to me with volumes of saw timber and stuff. So I will definitely share that with you. But yes, I would say there's probably potential for commercial harvest for sure.
There's so many things we could do. I'm looking for guidance on what we should do. It's the hard thing. And then, you know, I mean, we have to get input from a lot of sources, but folks, this is the problem we have is we are gonna have to figure out what we should do and have a rationale for, you know, whatever we do, somebody's gonna be unhappy. So we're gonna have to have a sense for ourselves of what are the reasons why we chose to do something. So that we're comfortable with it.
You know, timber harvest that also has the objective of creating better habitat. I think that we could feel good about or better about, you know, if we have to answer to the town.
Yep.
Or along those lines, then as long as it's not just, you know, I guess, well, it's not like we're lining our pockets with it. It would be going to the town, but yeah, people, whenever there's money involved, it can get a little tricky. So if there's, if it's accomplishing multiple goals that we've set out to do, then it's an easier sell, I think, and it feels better, so.
Right. I would never make a recommendation that wasn't something that was good for the forest also, so,
Cool.
yeah.
That's,
East of the Green River Reservoir, there was a big chunk of land, like 5,000 acres, and Wagner Woodlands owned it, and then Nature Conservancy bought it. And now some of it's been broken up and sold privately. But since 1970, they actually logged that land 3 different times. And it happened only in the wintertime. And when the Nature Conservancy owned it, they did these habitat cuts. And there were long strings where they cut big areas. And without any cutting on this land, the deer population dropped dramatically. But once they recut, went in and cut some more, the animals came back. It provided so much more food for animals and mammals and reptiles and birds. And some of these cuts, if we could do, and we don't even, they just go in 2 months and do what was prescribed and get out. And it would be in areas where we don't have hiking trails. We don't encourage a lot of people to walk. And it would provide food for animals. It may even provide a little revenue for the town, but probably not much. But whatever, I can see it once in a while, but let's just limit it to these areas that we want to leave, grow. They don't have to be big projects. We can do little projects. Even on Bedell's land, there's areas over there where we can do little projects where the school kids can go and see what we're doing and what the results are going to be from it, and where they can actually go over there and do some of these projects. So I think that's important.
one of the things I'm hearing in what you're saying, it reflects what Emily was saying before, that humans are a part of the landscape, right? And human beings do things, right? So, having management activity in our woods is kind of, it's part of what it is. A healthy woods is not a museum, right? Just giving voice to these ideas. So, also mindful of the time where we started a few minutes late and we're right at 8 o'clock right now. I feel like this, it's good to bounce these ideas around. Are you getting, the kinds of inputs that you're looking for?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I haven't been at a lot of your meetings. I'm gonna try to make more of them. Hopefully this conversation is ongoing, and as the plan is written, I'm sure more questions will come to mind for me and more thoughts that I'd like to share with you also. Just stay tuned. This won't be the end of it.
And I know, Kate and Hayden are still here. I know VHCP and US Forest Service are interested in making sure we have a, up-to-date forestry plan. It's part of the terms of the easements and so forth. So, you guys are in communication, right? So I think the main outcome of this is to be continued, ongoing conversation. One more thing I wanted to talk about tonight really briefly is, as I mentioned, I like the idea, I brought up the idea of having, essentially a speaker committee or speaker and education committee. So who wants to join me in doing that? I'd like to add at least one more meeting to our calendar, subcommittee meeting. It took a little bit of outreach to reach Jens, and there's folks from New England Wildlife Trust that would be willing to come and talk to us with a little bit of notice. I think if could publicize them and get more interest from folks in the town and cross fertilizing some other discussion. So I'd love to have volunteers. We could also nominate maybe people that aren't necessarily here tonight or on the. We could request. We don't have to limit it.
I nominate Roger.
We don't have to limit ourselves necessarily, I think, to people on our committee, but I'd like to work with some other folks to stir up more activity.
And the thought behind that, Gordon, or goal would be to bring more in each of these meetings in particular, or are you thinking also just additional walks on the property, things of that nature, or both?
Both, for sure. The main thing in my mind is, as stewards, we need to be educated. Right? It's our stewardship responsibility is to make considered decisions, to make the best decisions that we can for the sake of the property. Who can tell us what's the optimal states, or and state is dynamic for us, always changing, but who can tell us what healthy looks like? I don't know if there is anybody out there that, I know there's not an easy answer. If there was an easy answer,
Depends on who you ask, right?
yeah, professional foresters would have it, and we could all go home. But I think that we have to, it's our responsibility, and frankly, I think our delight to find out more about it. And so my hope is that a few of us can, dig in, cast a wide net, find good resources, and highlight things to bring back for the rest of the committee. And, help point people in a direction so that people could, can be further educated. I mean, I know, Joe and your family have been doing lots of things with on your land, and obviously, people have their backgrounds. It would be really good to have people come with opinions and perspectives to share. And so I want to encourage that, and that's what I'm thinking with having more time for committee members to look into stuff. So.
I mean, this does interest me. I kind of took that role on a little bit earlier, last year. I felt like that was the beginning. We were getting a lot of people, trying to get people onto the land and people in here. And then sort of once I realized this was going to happen, like we're getting the money, it's a good deal. I was like, all right, we don't do that anymore. Less work for us. But I see what you're saying now. It's like, now it's actually in some ways, some of the work is just getting going. Yeah, it's not just done. We have to, keep staying relevant to things. And so I could see helping out with that. I don't know if you need like a long commitment or maybe we all take turns, you know, I think we could work on that as a group also, but if you want like a more concentrated time, winter is good for me. Once spring hits, I get a little kind of pulled into major directions, so I could jump right in the beginning here if looking for one other person right now and go from there. I could say like through March or something and then go like that.
Yep, awesome. And you know, I mean, I don't mean to make somebody sign their life away. I'm just,
Well, no, I saw your email, Gordon. I read it and I think there's some value in it. You know, I think if I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I remember you threw out the idea of a weekly meeting for 10 weeks or so, maybe I'm misinterpreting. Or something like this. So that's too much of a commitment. I see a lot of this work could be done virtually, bouncing ideas back and forth, you know, through the email, you know, that kind of thing. And I'll happily participate, but I can't commit to a weekly meeting.
okay. What about, we have one meeting a month for the, you know, the whole group. What if it was one more meeting a month, right? So a subcommittee meeting plus the group meeting.
I mean, I could certainly do that.
Cool.
You're trying to have like brainstorming time to come up with different people to invite to do educational stuff with us? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
So, I mean, I don't mean to be a jerk, but why couldn't I can think of 10 different speakers right off the top of my head. You know, because there's just, we've done stuff with the Cold Hollow, you know what I'm talking about? We went and saw great speakers there and the Catamount does speakers and, I mean, we could like brainstorm a bunch of different speakers, Sterling College.
we have to decide who to invite
Right.
and somebody to reach out to invite them and arrange, you know, the logistics, the making sure that,
Yep.
you know, if we're scheduling this room or some other room, all that kind of
Got
stuff,
it.
right? Because it's not just the brainstorming.
Right. So would people be willing to meet like do you think like a half an hour before the meeting and just do it all in one day? Because quite frankly, we don't want to commit to another day in the month. We want to go cross-country skiing. No, I mean, and
No, that's fair.
we were on the other committee with our little committee.
Yeah.
and- But if you don't think it involved a lot, would it be feasible, like DJ saying, you know, I know you just said once a month, but what about parlaying it with this meeting, just the subcommittee meets before, or,
It might be.
you know?
I mean, if, you know, if that's what it takes to get people to
Yeah.
organize the stuff, sure. I would like to have one meeting between now and our next regularly scheduled meeting. So, you know, Gabe, you're in. DJ, you're in for one more meeting between now and then. If we can arrange it, that works with you guys. And, you know, I mean, this doesn't have to be a big project that takes 50 people to do something. 3 of us working together, you know, 5 of us working together.
I think the other thing is is there going to be a budget? Because I think some of the speakers we've seen, they're getting paid to speak.
Yeah.
So.
It depends on who we want to get and, you know.
Yep.
Value is.
That's the other thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, we're requesting some money in the town budget this year, specifically for outreach and communications. So we'll see if the town passes the budget on town meeting day. That'll be part of the answer. And I don't know if there will be constraints on the endowment that Trust for Public Land is putting together for us. Hayden or Kate, maybe you guys can comment if the $32,000 could we use that for speaker fees? Or obviously a small portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be really more for on the forest improvements over time. So like I mean, I know we've already raised the money for parking lots and kiosks and the trails, but you know, there's, you know, potentially additional culverts you're going to need to put in, potentially additional signs, and it's really more for on, and, or management activities on the forest.
Okay,
I mean,
no, that's fair. So, I mean, I think, you know, if it looks like there's somebody that, you know, if we need to pay travel and so on, we talked about having Matt Peters, the wildlife biologist who did the surveys, right? Have him come and talk about the things that he found. That may be a fee. Let's find out how much it will be and, you know, see what we would need to come up with. Cool. Well, we're over time. So I'll be in touch. And is there anything else anybody wants to cover before we wrap up?
I just had a quick thought as you were wrapping up. Just something that Craftsberry does. They have like a volunteer sort of group that processes firewood for people that, I guess, I don't know how they figure out who to give it to, but it goes to people in the town who need firewood. Just something that popped in my, we're talking about maybe doing some cuts.
Right. It's a great idea.
Yeah, so thought I'd put that in there. So it was an idea.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Adjourn.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Eat more.
Oh, yeah, but you can take them. I'm leaving these here.
Seriously.
As I was reading, I was thinking, I was like, oh,
Oh my God, we have.
this much. I have a